Warm welcome to you all to the Ministerial Forum of countries participating in GCCS 2017. It's indeed our honor to have amongst us galaxy of experts, also being honorable ministers from various countries. May I request the dignitaries to please come to the dais. Respected Mr. Ajit Doval, National Security Advisor to Honorable Prime Minister of India, Honorable Mohammad Azari, Jahromi, Ministry of ICT, Iran, Honorable Mr. Timo Soini, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, Honorable Manabu HORII, Parliamentary Vice Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan, Honorable Andrea Hermoso, Secretary of State, Ministry of Communications and Information, Venezuela, Honorable Mr. Rashid Ismailov, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Telecommunications, Russia, Honorable Sri Ravi Shankar Prasad, Minister of Electronics and IT, Law and Justice, Government of India, respected Mr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, Government of India. We have amongst us respected Mr. Ajit Doval, National Security Advisor to Honorable Prime Minister of India. We extend a very warm welcome to all the dignitaries on the dais. We extend a very hearty and warm welcome to all the dignitaries on the dais. It's indeed our honor to have amongst us galaxy of experts, also being the honorable ministers from various countries. These are the moments to be captured in the hearts and in the camera. I now request Mr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, Government of India, to kindly deliver the welcome address and give the opening remarks for the Ministerial Forum GCCS 2017. Mr. Kanwal Sibal.
Well, thank you very much. I think we can begin the proceedings immediately. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers, policy makers. In the last couple of days, there has been a discussion on the wide agenda that needs to be focused on when one talks about cyberspace, a very complicated subject. But we now have the opportunity to hear what the views of government and policy makers are. There are many issues involved, and I'm sure they have all been discussed at length during the course of these proceedings. One, of course, obvious one is that cyberspace has to be dealt as global commons, and which means that there has to be a definition of laws which will govern the underlying technical infrastructure and internet governance. We know that ICANN is responsible for maintenance and running of infrastructure through a multi-stakeholder model, but there are serious differences on the role of states, and governments obviously should have a role in ensuring national security and sovereignty, and to see that these are not jeopardized. As it happens, the root servers are in the West, and that causes a bit of a resentment, but they oppose the setting up of servers elsewhere for fear that the internet may get fractured. So the question is also whether the technical infrastructure can be isolated from other layers. All this is connected with the question of growth of e-commerce, freedom of expression, human rights, trademarks, patents, content regulation. Now, e-commerce is raising questions of cross-border trade and its regulation. New rules are under consideration in the WTO. There is the whole issue of the role of the FTAs in the digital economy. We know that this is on the agenda of the TTEP. Now, the cyberspace discussions have been dominated by aspects of national security. So far in the UNGE process, national security has taken prime place. And each country wants to be able to dominate this space by creating cyber norms, which means, therefore, that we have to seriously talk about the norms of behavior of states so that their territories are not allowed to be used for cyber attacks against other nations. And since there is a lack of trust between countries, so the building of trust so as to avoid a cyber arms race is very critical. Then there is the issue of cyberspace for espionage through surveillance. Now, can there be limits to surveillance for counterterrorism? How to treat intelligence and counterterrorism agencies for national security that violate privacy of global citizens, compromise sovereignty of nations. There's the whole issue of the role of law enforcement agencies and their requirement for access to data for crime negotiation. There is this issue of handling social media without being attacked for suppressing information, dissent, or human rights. Then information sharing of cyber incidents, the whole issue of critical information, of infrastructure protection. The privacy issues have become very, very important. There is the whole issue now of attribution, because this can lead to miscalculation and conflict, whether there should be an international attribution center like the IAEA. The issue of fake news has become, on platforms, has become very relevant. There's the issue of software vulnerability, and therefore whether there should be liabilities imposed on those who deploy massive software. So these are so many issues which are complicated, on which consensus has to be developed. And I'm sure this two-day conference has been addressing these issues. Consensus will be slow in the making because this is a new area which is now governing the lives of individuals every day. And this is one domain in which the industry is dominant. And the industry or the mega companies want to continue to play a central role. You would have seen that Microsoft now wants to promote a digital Geneva Convention. And finally, I'll end by saying that for India, which is going in for digitalization in a big way, we look at cyberspace from the viewpoint of development. This has become a very important aspect, and so far the discussions have been dominated by national security and the cyber arms race, but the development agenda has to be also introduced. So with these few words, I'll request the very distinguished panel of speakers to say a few words. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. So I'll first invite Honorable Minister of Law and Justice and Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, and he will, I'm sure, set the tone for the later comments of this group. Mr. Minister.
His Excellency Mr. Rashid Ismailov, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Telecommunications, Russia. Her Excellency Andrea Hermoso, Secretary of State, Ministry of Communication Information, Venezuela. His Excellency Mr. Manabu HORII, Parliamentary Vice Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan. His Excellency Mr. Timo Soini, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Finland. His Excellency Mr. Mohammad Azari Jahromi, Minister of ICT, Iran. Mr. Sibal, Mr. Ajit Doval, ministers, delegates. I think this is one of the most important interaction of this two-day conference of cyberspace, because now the ministers are talking. And a lot of ministers are here. Will be shared our best practices in quest of cyber for growth and cyber for inclusion. I have the benefit of sharing one-to-one exchange with a lot of my distinguished ministerial colleagues, and I could see the same vision available everywhere. But what is the matter of great moment? That in this panel from India, we have two of the finest minds of India. Mr. Kanwal Sibal has been a distinguished former Foreign Secretary of India, a very outstanding author, and a great mind of strategic security with his vast diplomatic experience. And we have the National Security Advisor of India, Mr. Ajit Doval. I think any word of security, locally or globally, is not alien to Mr. Ajit Doval. And Mr. Ajit Doval is not only a strategic leader only of thinking, but also he is a great doer. He has led personally with his officer some of the finest challenges, some of the most sensitive challenges to India's security, both in India and abroad. That is very important for the delegates for here to know. And on a personal note, he used to head a think tank earlier, which came with a revised version of India's history. It is a wonderful book series. And when I was going to the editorials, I was pleasantly surprised to learn they have been written by Mr. Ajit Doval, a profound man of letters and learning. I welcome to all the ministers and Mr. Kanwal Sibal and Mr. Doval. You know, we are sitting at the cusp of a big change. Some of the change is coming because of our efforts, and some of the change is occurring because of power of technology. Some of the change is within our control. Some of the change we have to follow because technology is ahead of us. That is the challenge which we are experiencing today. How do we go forward? Obviously, we can go forward only by building trust. We can go forward by undertaking reciprocity. And we can go forward by having certain agreed norms of behavior in the cyberspace, which whole this conference is about. What should be some of the agreed principles which we need to work about? The first, we will have to acknowledge the transformative power of digital technology. As we say in India, Digital India is to transform India and Indians. Similar way, digital technology is changing many other countries, whether the affluent or the developing both. The second is, we need to have an egalitarian global cyberspace. That second point is indeed very important, which we, who are the ministers, who are the policy makers, need to understand. Innovation is central to digital empowerment. How can we in innovation share our best practices? Intellectual property or patent will be there and should be there. But can we share our best practices which we need to foster? When I talk of egalitarian global cyberspace, I mean the Indian experience. I have talked about it yesterday. Honorable the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has talked about. But India's story of an egalitarian digital ecosystem has delivered results. And we are here to share our experiences in the field of direct benefit transfer, access to health, access to farm produce, empowerment, digital literacy with our friends from other parts of the world. But what is important is the digital profile can be very big. India's digital profile is very big, undoubtedly. A huge country with a huge population, with a hugely talented people. But a huge system has also to become a smart system. And this coordination is important, where the issue of security comes into a very important play, I would like to highlight. And this connection, I have to give certain suggestions. How can we replicate some of our successes with the other countries? And how can we gain from the experience of other countries with us? Let me give you a very concrete example. And this is a food for thought for my country's ministers who have come from nearly 26 countries. Today, Asia and Africa are becoming the big footprints of digital technology, including of digital platforms, be it Facebook, be it your Twitter, be it other platforms, and India's homegrown technology from Aadhaar to other system to digital locker. At least if these technologies, Aadhaar is only confined to India, but other platforms are becoming global platform, should we create an ecosystem where there should be some obligation to reinvest the revenue in the countries from there, so much of earning is there to ensure more and more digital ecosystem spreading. That is an idea I'm giving to all of you. The investment can be in the shape of centers of excellence, can be in the shape of more human resource creation, can in the shape of other greater engagement. But this is an area we need to explore. The second thing is, I'm giving a proposal from a global forum of cyber expertise. How can we share our best practice with you, your cyber expertise with us? Because remember one thing, the biggest asset of digital technology is it does not admit of physical boundary. Geography becomes irrelevant in the case of digital technology. There is a need for greater sharing of expertise. Therefore, collaboration and cooperation must become the order of the day to make our cyberspace more equal and more global. That is what we policymakers need to understand. And on behalf of India, I wish to convey, India is very, very open to sharing our best practices with other countries, in particular the developing countries. The third issue which I have to convey to the distinguished panel and to my friends present here is, and I will be elaborating also in my concluding address when the foreign minister comes, Madam Sushma Swaraj, what I am highlighting. 3D. Digital inclusion, digital access, and digital security. These 3D must become the important signpost of cyberspace. Internet has to be accessible. As I said yesterday, I am repeating today, access to internet should not be negotiable. Access to internet must be available without discrimination. Number two, internet must lead to inclusion, developing the common man, common person in any country, empowering him or her, bridging the digital divide. And thirdly, digital security. Digital inclusion, digital access, and digital security. Some of the points Mr. Sibal just talked about. Internet has to be safe and secure. And to making it safe and secure, the government of the day has to play a crucial role against radical element, against terrorists, against extremists. And the three can work together. Internet must have access for healthcare, for education, for empowerment. Internet can be accessible only when it is available without discrimination. And it can work only when it is not under the cloud of cyber threat. Therefore, can we build an international consensus around these three concepts? Digital inclusion, digital access without discrimination, and digital security. And I'm very happy today that we need to acknowledge as ministers and policymakers that cyber security challenge must be taken the frontal challenge. We need to make capacity building. We need to undertake education. We need to create human resource. We need to have laboratories, cyber policing, cyber judicial training to judges, and other forms of challenges which are there must be met with a common commitment to have that threat averted. In that regard also, India has some experiences. We need to speak together. We can share our best practices. What is my last observation as the minister from India? My last observation, ladies and gentlemen, is very clear. India's will be the voice of moderation. India's will be the voice of reason. In this whole digital discourse, India wants to lend its experience and also human resource and also talent in the last so many years. But I wish to make it very clear, India's will also be a voice of assertion for the digitally deprived and digitally marginalized. This is how we wish to speak as far as India's stand is concerned. And as I said yesterday, I want to make it very clear, India firmly stands for a more digital egalitarian order where we wish to lend our weight to those who are digitally deprived and digitally marginalized. But with logic, reason and moderation. That's how we need to work together. I'm sure my other distinguished colleagues on the podium will lend their own analytical expansion of the theme I have put forward. But what has made me very happy, that since yesterday I have met countless friends, and there is a very abiding common theme, that cyberspace must become an equal world, free from threat and also insecurity. If that commitment is there, I can only say the New Delhi Cyberspace Conference has become a very big success. With these opening words, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for setting the tone for discussions this afternoon. I think one can sum up what you said by the 3 Ds that you enunciated: digital inclusion, digital access, and digital security. And when you said that India will be the voice of assertion for the digitally deprived, you got a clap from the audience, which means that they have responded to what you have said. May I now invite Deputy Minister, Ministry of Telecommunications of Russia, Mr. Rashid Ismailov.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, ministers, I'm now going to talk about the concept of the UN Convention on Secure Internet that has been developed in Russia. And it reflects that one of the key goals of the international society is to ensure the reliable, safe, and secure use of information and technologies and establish international norms and rules for Internet. From a legal point of view, the Internet is a complex subject of regulation, which includes many aspects, such as child online protection, respect of the basic human rights and freedoms in the information environment, respect for the right for privacy, protection of personal data, ensuring the safety, security, and stability of the critical internet resources, intellectual property protection, rights protection, creation and the cross-border trust, ambience, and many, many others. Currently, some aspects of its regulation are divided among different organizations worldwide, and their efforts are largely uncoordinated, while the complexity and its regulation strongly requires close international cooperation with the leading role of the governments. In this regard, Russia considers that it is time now to develop a universal document that could be applied to the regulation of secure operation and development of the Internet, the establishing of appropriate policies and technical regulations at national and international levels. Introducing the draft concept of the UN Convention on Secure Internet, hereinafter the concept of convention, I would like to note that such a draft gives a legal framework for the process of Internet governance on the basis of equal participation of the global communities in its governance. The purpose of the document is to facilitate further development of the Internet, increase its security and ensure the guarantees of the rights and freedoms of its users, establish proper conditions for equal international cooperation in the Internet governance, and facilitate adoption and strengthening of measures towards a more effective and efficient Internet governance through improvement of national measures and international cooperation. In order to achieve these goals, the concept offers general principles for international cooperation in the Internet governance. This document is built upon the proper balance between the law enforcement and respect for fundamental human rights, and as provided in the 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as in other international human rights treaties. The document refers to the Tunis Agenda of the Information Society for the Information Society, and the document and the outcome document of the high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the overall review of the implementation of the outcomes of the World Summit on the Information Society in Tunisia, according to which each state has a sovereign right to independently address the Internet public policy issues. For example, this document is, if implemented in different countries, would allow each country to protect its national segment, including its critical infrastructure, as well as guarantee respect for the rights and freedoms of users and protect citizens in the Internet. Moreover, all this would help ensure that no state or a group of states had the right to cause interference to the Internet functioning, manipulate Internet access in an attempt to influence other sovereign states. According to the concept of the Convention, Internet has two levels of governance, that is, international and national. In the present document, it is basically proposed to carry out the Internet governance by international organizations. They develop rules and standards as well as monitor the implementations, at the same time ensuring that the governance of critical infrastructure remains decentralized. Draft concept of the UN Convention stipulates that a set of legal norms will be identified and developed in order to establish legal basis for Internet governance. Issues of the intellectual property protection, establishment of cross-border trust ambience, personal data protection, responsibility of global Internet companies, freedom of speech, mass media, anonymity in the Internet, and others are supposed to be regulated separately. Is the international community ready at this stage to adopt the global legally binding documents in the sphere of Internet governance? According to my experience, there is a long way to go actually, because either there is no clear understanding which body of the government, of this or that government in the country should be responsible for that one. Most of the countries incline that this should be done by ministries of foreign affairs, but I think on the community of the ICT ministries, it has to be discussed firstly, and it was discussed actually on our level on the BRICS meeting in Bangalore in 2016 and this year in Hangzhou in China. This is just food for thought, and we realize this, that issues on the internet governance on the international level, as Russia's contribution in joint work in this direction. At the same time, we believe that initiation of the development of a universal document is necessary, and it is time actually, and today on behalf of the Russian Federation, we propose to join efforts in preparation of the convention in order to develop international legal basis for the establishment of internet regulation. Increasing number of countries acknowledge that security threats in the sphere of ICT jeopardize our abilities to use the internet for ramping up economic growth and development worldwide. In digital environment, as well as in any other environments, governments have unique responsibility to ensure security, stability, and economic ties with other countries. In Fortaleza in July 2014, in Brazil, BRICS countries adopted the declaration affirming paramount importance of the international law to ensure a peaceful, secure, and open digital and internet space. This can be achieved in close international cooperation and under the leading role of the states. I would like to emphasize that this process should be open, of course, and transparent to all countries and stakeholders. Thank you very much, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I mean, it's quite clear that from Russia's point of view, an international convention to govern internet is very necessary, and you would favor that, and that international governance should be by international organizations. Unfortunately, the UN-GEE process couldn't issue a consensus document because there were differences of views on the role of the United Nations in this regard. But this is a subject that naturally will entail a lot of discussions at the international level. May I now invite Ms. Andrea Hermoso, Secretary of State, Ministry of Communication and Information, Venezuela.
Good afternoon. Namaskar. On behalf of our President Nicolás Maduro and the people of Venezuela, I would like to thank the government of India for the invitation and congratulate the organizers for such a wonderful event. Since 2002, Venezuela has been facing an unconventional war that has several battlefronts. In the media file, the attack has been so voracious that the deaths of hundreds of Venezuelans have been justified by unchecked messages of hate transmitted through social media. We ask ourselves, will the international community turn its eyes as in the case of the radio in Rwanda, responsible for an atrocious genocide? The nation states have the right to defend their precepts, but overall consideration of any law and right, the right to life, must prevail. We can demonstrate with milestones all the aggressions that our country has suffered from the field of digital media. In cyberspace, our right to life and freedom is free. In this fight, we have also defended the right to free information and knowledge, especially for the youngest. The Venezuelan state has been in charge of maintaining access to internet and new communication technologies at the forefront of Latin America countries. Some figures support this statement. Internet penetration of more than 61%, more than 5 million children and young people obtain computers from educational process. More than 50% of our population has a data plan for browsing and use mobile apps. Almost 70% of the population has at least one account in a social network, and 40% of them are young people between 23 and 35 years old. In the year of 2004 in Venezuela, there was a real revolution in communication. For the first time, a Latin American government explained to its population the right to receive information, entertainment, and quality education from radio media. It was about the campaign and public discussion that sought to approve the law of social responsibility in radio and television. This boldness on the part of Venezuelan government, led at the time by Hugo Chavez, generated an immediate reaction on the part of those who enjoy the lack of regulation regarding the content of radio media in Venezuela. For more than 40 years, there were hardly any laws dedicated to technical issues related to telecommunications. There weren't even any moments of regulatory spaces where the main thing was the discussion on cultural consumption, national identity, customs, and rights of children and adolescents to a life without violence, among others. The law came to give a framework of support for the creation of committees of users, support for independent national production and alternative media, the protection of women, children, and adolescents, the right to replica by any citizen affected by a mass media, among other advances enjoyed today by the Venezuelan society. In the communicational field in Venezuela, we compared the current situation in 2017, especially in the bubble of social networks, with that year, 2004, before the approval of the law of social responsibility in radio and television. Still, we understand that there are very clear differences between the internet and the already mature radio spectrum. We know that the cyber spectrum is of a much greater complexity, globalized and open access, both for consumption and production, and also for dissemination of contents. There are no laws or treaties that protects peoples and the nation states from possible abuses exercised by transnational media corporations or terrorism groups through their online contents. There are no international agreements that protect governments or peoples from the presence of these actors dangerous for global stability in their national territory on their society. There are no laws that facilitate working with these corporations or organizations to guarantee safety and security. Among those weaknesses, terrorism has been used to multiply its message in ways that are projected as impossible to regulate. Our diplomacy is based on the conviction of a multipolar world, based on the Bolivarian doctrine of universal balance, and with the belief that the governments must articulate efforts for global governance and not leave these issues in the hands of some private interests. With stupor we see, and this is the reason we want to make a call of conscience to the peoples and governments of the world, that corporate governance has seen on the internet a space of legal vacuum. All governments of the world should take a step forward in terms of defense of civil rights threatened by this legal loophole. It is not a state interest for the total control of media space. As progressive governments, we agree that citizens have the right free expression and development of relationships, and the internet is a place for this social development. The Bolivarian government considers that to the extent that states are absent from the governance of the internet, there will be a disproportionate imbalance in the weight of interests in which trade, economics, and deregulation supersede the rights of the citizens. This represents a serious threat to the global stability. The recent actions of Twitter platform to unilaterally block, without prior notice and without argued reasons, all the promoted content of the news agency, Russia Today and Sputnik on that platform, corroborates the theory that this corporation undermines freedom of expression and diplomatic relations between states by handling information and administration of the communication specters in a hostile manner, not only against individuals, but also against the institution of states that defends rights of citizens in the world. It is not an exaggeration to say that with the apparent intangibility of the message transmitted through the internet, through hate campaigns, the daily life of millions of human beings is being watched. Hate campaigns against certain social sectors have generated hundreds of deaths in different countries, victims of terrorism. In the case of Venezuela, these services were used in a criminal manner by some users who call for violence and encourage others to commit crimes such as murder and the burning of living people. This happened exponentially during 4 months of political violence in 2017, developed by sectors of the Venezuela political opposition with the express objective of overthrowing the legitimately elected government of the President Nicolás Maduro. Victims of hate messages designed by the same leadership of the opposition parties and transmitted through social media timelines were not able to denounce the content. Even following guidelines established by these social networks, the hate messages were not eliminated nor the account sanctioned. Most of these accounts calling to act against Venezuelan citizens were anonymous. There is a dire need for more co-responsibility in the use of social media. Users, corporations, a government needs to work together to come up with a common framework that will protect everyday citizens from the abuse and misuse of online hate messages. Preventing educational campaigns must be complemented with correctly safety measures that will limit anonymous users and corporations that abuse of the right to free speech under the guise of privacy protection. On November 2nd, 2017, the National Constituent Assembly of Venezuela promulgated the constitutional law against hate for peaceful coexistence and tolerance, which create a safeguard against the use of expression of hatred against people for any cause. This law guarantees, like the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the right to life. It's a law of great social depth because it describes current problems and expands with every specific levels the protection of people from violence, hatred, and intolerance. Legislators shielded the people from all types of aggression, all type of violence, and the use of war propaganda. Through social networks such as Twitter, oppositional political actors send messages of hatred and incitement to kill. Highlighted among those messages in 2014 was that of a retired general who gave precise instructions of how to install motorcycle traps. When installing the steel cable or ropes that this person ordered, this installation ended the life of at least 2 young Venezuelans. A hospital was attacked and 2 community leaders were killed by the false messages of a journalist and a presidential candidate, inciting destabilizing actions. In 2017, a renowned academic suggested through his personal account on Twitter to throw blunt objects against peaceful pro-government supporters at a rally. The result, a passerby lady died after being hit in the head by an object thrown from the top of a building. The previous example ignited alarms about the complex task of legislating in the field of networks. Anyway, this small step in the search for peaceful coexistence, even on the internet, must be developed legally by the Venezuelan state and each of the states that suffer daily the ravages of the dissemination of violent messages through the internet. There must be a social accountability with regards to responsible content online. Unchecked expressions of hate and intolerance have a direct impact on the stability of a country. Venezuela is an example, but the solution is not any one country, but in the joint effort. That is why spaces like this conference are so important to raise awareness. From Venezuela, we raise our voice so that more and more states and peoples have access to knowledge and the most genuine expression of democratic values, but above all the right to a life free of violence and hatred. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Andrea Hermoso, Secretary of State of Venezuela. You have focused your intervention on the handling of social media and messages of hate which lead to violence, and in this connection you've spoken about right to life. And I suppose the challenge before the international community is to develop global norms for handling social media, and the policies call for data localization if access to servers is prevented in case of major law and order and public safety incidents. Now may I invite the Parliamentary Vice Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, Mr. Manabu HORII, to address us. Mr. HORII has to catch a flight this evening, and so he will be leaving the podium at the end of the speeches and before the Q&A session.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly my honor to have participated in the 5th edition of the Global Conference on Cyberspace 2017 here in New Delhi, India. It is only fitting that India, the world's largest democratic country and the leading IT state, would host such a successful conference. As in the past conferences, a wide range of partnerships from the government sector, as well as the private sector, academia, and civil society have gathered under the philosophy of a multi-stakeholder approach to engaging in discussions towards ensuring a free, fair, and secure cyberspace. I would like to extend my deep thanks to the Government of India's leadership, most notably Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and the Electronics and IT Minister, Mr. Ravi, Shankar, Prasad, for hosting this conference under the theme of Cyber for All. As we all know, the spread of the Internet and smartphones, as well as the development of big data and the Internet, have been producing unprecedented, diverse, and new services, thereby creating new jobs. Since 2012, when the GCCS embarked on its great development, Japan has been carrying out various reforms under what is known as Abenomics. We are bringing about reforms that had previously been considered impossible to do. Japan is now working toward a society 5.0, in which we try to resolve various social challenges by delivering only the necessary amount of goods and services at exactly the required timing to only the people who need them. We do it by incorporating into every aspect of social life and industry the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution, such as IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, and the sharing economy. Here are free, fair, and secure cyberspace, as well as public-private cooperation is essential in order to integrate various knowledge, information, technologies, and human resources that are currently dormant. I am confident that our Society 5.0 is in line with the main theme of this conference, Cyber for All. However, the expansion of cyberspace has produced new challenges. As you remember, the recent WannaCry malware shut down computer systems at hospitals, threatening the lives of many ordinary people. Also, the disruption through cyberspace of the very foundation of democracy, including the political party system and election process, is still fresh in our memories. Of course, Japan is not immune to such cyber attacks. In May 2015, the Japan Pension Service, which managed the precious national pension funds, suffered cyber attacks, causing the leak of personal information for about 1.25 million people. Cyberspace is an incubator for new innovation, and these incidents clearly show the importance of securing that domain. Now, let me briefly explain the three pillars of Japan's cyber diplomacy to ensure security in the vast cyberspace. The first pillar is the promotion of the rule of law in cyberspace. All conflicts must be prevented not by force or coercion, but by law, thereby leading to their peaceful resolution. Executing international law should be applicable to cyberspace, and Japan will take the initiative in implementing international rules and norms and make contribution to the establishment of the rule of law in cyberspace. Because we believe that will help bring peace and stability to the international community. We will also remain committed to the discussion on internet governance, and it is particularly important here to take a multi-stakeholder approach to allow all voices to be heard, since cyberspace has been developed by and is now mostly managed by the private sector. The second pillar is the development of confidence building measures. Cyber activities are invisible and easily transcend national borders. In order to prevent cyber contingencies from developing, it is necessary for government to understand and share each other's laws and regulations, systems, policies, strategies, and mindset so that we can deepen our mutual trust. Therefore, Japan has been engaging in bilateral and multilateral cyber dialogues with 14 countries and regions. The most recent case of such efforts is the establishment of the ASEAN Regional Forum in sessional meeting on ICT security. Through these measures, Japan will promote confidence building, international partnerships, capacity building, and the implementation and universalization on international law and norms. The third pillar is cooperation on capacity building. It is difficult for any one country to deal with attacks in cyberspace alone, because that domain is connected to everywhere in the world. We cannot rule out the possibility of being attacked through countries where awareness of cybersecurity and our capability for it is not adequate. In order to fill up security holes around the globe, each country needs to have sufficient capability to respond to various cyber attacks. In September 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted at the United Nations, and the government of Japan created its SDGs promotion headquarters, headed by Prime Minister Abe. That particular government body has set one of its goals as leading the efforts toward a future where economic, social, and environmental improvements are attended in an integrated, sustainable, and resilient manner, with no one being left behind. Japan will further utilize information and communication technologies to achieve that goal. As is the case for the Indo-Pacific region, cyberspace needs to be a free, fair, and secure domain in order to continue to produce innovation and prosperity for the future. Japan's cyber diplomacy that I talked about today is our efforts toward that goal. Let me conclude my remarks on a personal note. As I participated in the Winter Olympic Games in Lillehammer in 1994, I am truly delighted that Japan will host the Rugby World Cup in 2019 and the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2020. In hosting these major events, we are determined to be very well prepared, including for cybersecurity. As a Japanese citizen and a former Olympian, I sincerely hope that as many of you as possible will be able to visit Japan with peace of mind, enjoy the country that is on the move toward Society 5.0, and feel the genuine excitement of watching world-class athletes perform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Minister HORII. You emphasized the need for a free, fair, and secure cyberspace, which is, of course, a major concern for all countries. I would now invite Mr. Timo Soini, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Finland. For the next session, we are expecting the arrival of our Foreign Minister, Madame Swaraj, and she started from her office, but we are running late here. So may I request the speakers to limit their interventions to 6 to 8 minutes so that we do not get too much delayed for the next session and make our Foreign Minister wait. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to extend my warmest thanks to the Government of India for hosting this important global conference of cyberspace. This conference offers us a forum where various stakeholders can discuss cyber issues. Indeed, a multi-stakeholder approach is essential in cyber issues, both domestically and internationally. Alongside governments, we need private sector, academia, and civil society on board. Otherwise, our cyber policy cannot be sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, since the first meeting of London process took place 6 years ago, the world has changed dramatically. We have never before seen such a speed change as brought by the digital revolution we are experiencing now. Cyberspace and digitalization offer us vast possibilities in increasing our economic and social welfare. Access to information and sharing of good practices have improved. Internet, which has made this development possible, was built with good intentions, but it is clear that there is also used for bad purposes. The more we have become globally interconnected, the more the vulnerability of our societies has increased. We have done a lot about enhancing the resilience of our societies. But are we really prepared? Have we done our utmost to prevent a serious cyber attack? An attack which could hit us and paralyze the vital functions of our societies, even threaten human lives. There are also other forms of cyber threats. Sometimes it is difficult to distinguish between internal and external security threats. Between safety and security of individuals and societies, or between physical and digital security. All in all, cyber threats can be complex and hard to predict. Cybersecurity may also pertain to international peace and security. Everybody has to do their homework and build up their national capacities and resilience. But we also need international cooperation. We need cyber diplomacy. There are many issues on international cyberspace agenda that deserve our attention. Today, I would like to concentrate on the following key issues: international law, human rights, and capacity building. We underline that the state activities in cyberspace are governed by international law, including human rights law. It is good to recall that the UN groups of governmental experts have affirmed the important role of international law. In particular, in the UN Charter, plays in maintaining peace and stability and promoting open, secure, stable, accessible, and peaceful ICT environment. We regret that the most of the recent GGE of 2016-17 did not succeed in agreeing a consensus report. International discussions on specific aspects of international law in relation to use of the ICTs will nevertheless continue and should be encouraged. This applies, for instance, to the protection of the international humanitarian law provides in situations of armed conflict. Finland was a member of the most recent GGE and wishes to commend the work that has accomplished by the group in spite of the final outcome. We are committed to continuing the exchange of views with all interested states. Furthermore, exchange of views is needed on serious cyber attacks below the threshold of an armed attack, both concerning their prevention and response. Prevention should include exploring standards of cyber vigilance. Response should include the tools available under the law of state responsibility, including countermeasures. Agreement on these basic principles and rules would create a solid basis for shared expectations of responsible state behavior. I would also like to recall the GCCS work on recommendations or norms of responsible state behavior that have been welcomed and endorsed by the UN General Assembly. These recommendations have outlined standards as to what states should do at the national level and how they should cooperate each other. These include how to protect the critical infrastructure, ensure the integrity of supply chain, or prevent the proliferation of malicious ICT tools and techniques, and to share information. Regional confidence-building measures can also contribute to the stability in cyberspace by increasing cooperation and transparency. I believe that the confidence-building measures adopted with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe could serve as an inspiration also for other regions. In this context, I would like to mention the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime, known as the Budapest Convention, which aims to protect persons and their rights in cyberspace. The Convention continues to attract ratifications, and many non-members of the Council of Europe have joined it. Ladies and gentlemen, human rights apply online as they do offline. Governmental measures should never undermine the realization of anyone's human rights on the internet. Freedom of expression, right to peacefully assembly and association, right to privacy, and access to information are essential to protect human dignity. The use of internet shall be guided by the principles of democracy, transparency, and the rule of law. In Finland, our aim is to offer equal opportunities and fast internet connections to all citizens. The work undertaken in the European Union, international and regional organizations needs to continue. Initiatives such as Freedom Online Coalition, of which Finland is a member, can contribute to the human standards and good practices. We support human rights defenders also through the Digital Defenders Partnership. We need to strengthen our common efforts in enhancing capacity building in countries which we are now building up their ICT structures. It is also important to educate people to live in the digital environment and pay attention to cybersecurity in everyday life. Attention should be paid especially to the education, employment, and leadership of women and girls. Finland has over the past decade contributed more than 100 million euros in ICT-related projects in developing countries. In building resilience, there are no one-size-fits-all solutions, but we can learn from each other. We can take advantage of platforms such as the Global Forum of Cyber Expertise. The global agenda on the cyber capacity building adopted in this conference serves a useful roadmap in this respect. The proposal made by the Government of India to establish a digital knowledge sharing platform could further contribute to our efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, technological challenges is also part of our diplomatic and political agenda. There are not just technical matters. We have to engage with the issues such as artificial intelligence or robotics. We cannot allow technology and machines alone determine our future developments. Finally, let me also put cyber issues into the larger context, namely that of hybrid threats. Cyber tools are often used in hybrid operations. We need to strengthen our resilience in this respect. This is also why a new European Centre of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats has been established in Helsinki. This Centre of Excellence aims to address hybrid issues from a strategic perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, when we discuss cyber issues, a lot of attention is usually devoted to threats, and I have also done here today. However, I would like to encourage us to take a leap forward. I would like to encourage us to adopt a wider perspective, embrace the vast potential offered by digitalization. Let us work together to rebuild the trust we need for a safe and secure cyberspace that is based on the full compliance with the international law, including human rights. Only in this way can we fully seize the opportunities provided by the digital revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Soini. You have focused on international law, human rights, and capacity building as primary concerns in your cyber policies. Now, may I invite Mr. Mohammad Javad Azari Jahromi, Ministry of ICT, Iran, to please address us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me begin by thanking the Indian government for hosting the 5th Global Conference on Cyberspace, especially Excellency Mr. Prasad for his hospitality of this conference. Excellencies, ambassadors, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Cyberspace is expanding at an accelerated pace, and the daily life of billions of people around the world is becoming more dependent on internet technologies and services. I'm happy to inform you that during the past 4 years, we have increased our international internet capacity for domestic use by a factor of 15, increased the capacity of our national IP network by a factor of 20, increased the number of broadband users by a factor of 10, and increased our south-north transit capacity by a factor of 15 as well. Moreover, we now have 19 provincial data centers up and running, and e-services have increased threefold. More than 23,000 software development teams have been formed. 4,500 startup companies offered their product in Elecom Exhibition 2017 in Tehran, and 150,000 new jobs were created. Local contents also have increased 4 times, and while we have experienced a threefold increase in the market size for ICT-related services and products, we have planned for another threefold increase in next 4 years. The Iranian nation is benefiting a lot from such expansions. More jobs are being created, and the environmental impact is very encouraging. For example, due to the fact that ICT-based services are widely used, energy consumption per capita is significantly less as compared to situations where such services were not available. For the next 4 years, in addition to aggressively expanding internet services and applications, we are determined to introduce new technologies and novel applications such as IoT, cloud computing, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, smart cities, m-government, and enhanced cybersecurity. We believe all of the above provide us with exceptional opportunities for digital development, good governance, and ease of living in Iran. While undoubtedly there are many positive aspects of the internet, there are serious points of concern that should be addressed properly. Today, we are witnessing that the internet and social media are being used to spread hate, to propagate false information, to coordinate terrorism, and to call for violence. Moreover, respect for privacy on the internet is fast fading, as personal information and preferences are being collected by many popular applications and search engines on an international scale for commercial purposes. Such practices cannot be justified, and there is a need to find proper and effective means to mitigate their undesirable impacts. Besides, cybersecurity is a very serious topic, and it is becoming more vital to ensure that cyber attacks are dealt with effectively in a timely manner. In addition, fundamental concern about privacy and data protection require a new vision on the boundaries between universal and international legal frameworks for application and services on one hand, and the sovereign rights of each country on the other hand. We are hopeful that by way of international dialogue and joint action by various players and stakeholders, we can all enjoy from a better, safer, more secure, and more beneficial internet with significantly less negative side effects. I welcome your views on our way forward, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Jahromi. You have informed us about the major expansion of internet services in Iran, and you've expressed concerns which are legitimate about the social media being used to spread hate and terrorism and violence. And you've raised issues of privacy, and as is the case with other speakers, you've also emphasized the need for a safe and secure internet. Now we'll bookend today's panel by inviting Mr. Ajit Doval, National Security Advisor of India, to give us the benefit of his views on internet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable Minister, my fellow panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a very proud privilege for me to be here at GCCS 2017, and I must congratulate the organizers for this great conference that has been organized on such an important event, on such an important subject that probably sees the imagination and thoughts of everywhere around. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all opportunities, all changes come with concomitant risks and threats, and there is nothing new about it. Cyber is one thing which probably has changed the life of people, the governance, the security systems, and many things all around, trade, commerce, and you name it, and it is there. But then, why is it that we feel so much concerned about the possible threats it could pose, the possible challenges it can bring? Because it is very unique. Something that has never happened on this globe before. Never before there had been any change which was so wide in its expanse, affected the life of so many people, and as it is today, maybe 10 years hence and 15 years hence, maybe that your life may become completely unmanageable without the support or without the orderly the management of the cyberspace. It is also because it's expanding too fast and in every walk of life. But there is something else that makes it specifically unique. That for its challenges, there is no one who has got a solution. There is no state or the model of governance who can do, because it's a virtual space, there is no sovereignty. There are no barriers. Anybody who can get a computer and get connected to the cyberspace is a stakeholder. The problem is about the response to the challenges. And that response becomes very vital because in most of the great opportunities, the most of the great assets that come with it, comes a concomitant problem. If it provides you the global connectivity, it also provides a global connectivity to the terrorist, to the criminal. It also provides a connectivity to the people who would like to subvert the minds and hearts of our young people and the young generation and take them to a certain type of thinking. It could add not only to criminality in the areas of trade and commerce and bank frauds, but also pollute the minds of our children. And how do we control it? Now, that is the real threat. That's such a vast opportunity, something that can change the whole pattern of our living and thinking, and probably is also confronted with something which is so horrendous and so increased. The problem is management of this space. Probably, many things will have to be thought with the great experts sitting here. But I like to tell you some few things. I know and I'm aware that the legal and the legislative support to this entire thing and the legislative and the legal support of it is extremely important. But more than that is thinking of a new jurisprudence of it. It will require a new jurisprudence. We will not be able, problem of attribution. And the problem of attribution may be so circumstantial that is getting the direct evidence in any court of law may be very difficult. But more importantly, in case the people have to be proceeded against, extradited or done through this process, probably that will never succeed. The world will have to think, the states will have to think whether we need a very specific new regime for dealing with the threats, dealing with the challenges that the cyberspace violations of that occur. But more than that, first there has got to be a consensus amongst all the states, the private sector, the stakeholders, the academia, the media, every people, actually everyone is a stakeholder, but the private sector has a very major role. And the states has a very major role. We will have to come to those norms which have got to be adhered in case we would like to have a better management of this cyberspace. It would also be extremely important that we should know which are the high-density areas. And those high-density areas will have to be given a greater representation, a greater role, and a greater say and a voice. In case we want it to be an orderly this thing, whether it is in geographies, whether it is in terms of the sharing innovations and technologies, whether there is a greater density in terms of the new hardware and the softwares that are being developed. As must have been said here, and as has been discussed yesterday also, that India, for example, are going to be 600 million users of the cyberspace by probably 2018. Probably, the number may increase substantially high. There are various schemes which have been brought about, which will definitely give the cyberspace footprints of India will be very far and wide. Similarly, there may be other geographies. We have got African countries where there is a fast changing towards that. So let the control and these things be done in a way. Let the patterns be made and the systems be brought where there is a due representation and there is a due say and a voice of the people and the geographies and the other sectors which have to play a very, very vital role. It may also be necessary that the security organizations of the world probably will need much greater cooperation and should have very specific cyber-related security structures which are able to do the fast exchange of information, identify the defaulters, proceed against them, give the support to the law enforcing agencies in seeing that the cyber laws and norms are adhered to. I know that this very august crowd here, the people who have assembled from all parts of the world with great experience, knowledge and expertise at the command, I'm sure that they will try to identify many more areas. This is what I'm telling, the situation exists today. But let me warn, the situation is going to be much more compound and complex as we get into the domain of artificial intelligence, the machine learning, the IoTs, the many other works, the robotics and others, which are going to create and compound these problems manifold. So we have got to right now think of the structures, systems, methodologies, interconnectivity, governmental support, multilateral and the bilateral cooperation, which probably we will be able to cope with this and see that the great asset that has come to the world and has come to the humanity really remains. We may not be able to completely wipe out its negative side, but we at least can do a lot to mitigate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Doval. You have very well laid out what the dangers are ahead, artificial intelligence, robots, and we need much greater cooperation between national security organizations of various countries, etc., etc. There is a view that there is no national security without cyber security. And I think in some senses you have underlined this point. Now we come to the end of our discussion this afternoon. If we had more time, we would have invited some ministers from the hall who wanted to make brief comments. But since we've already overshot by 20 minutes, I'm afraid our minister has come. Therefore, I'll have to close this panel discussion, and I'll invite all of you to give a big hand to the ministers.
Thank you so much. In the Indian tradition, the guests are held in the highest esteem, and as a token of our immense respect, we want to present mementos to esteemed guests, dignitaries on the dais. May I request Secretary, Ministry of Electronics, Information Technology, Shri Ajay Sahni, to please come up onto the stage and present a memento to respected Mr. Ajit Doval. In the Indian tradition, the guests are held in the highest esteem, and we say, Atithi Devo Bhava. Mr. Ajay Sahni is presenting memento to respected Mr. Ajit Doval, and I would like to request again Mr. Ajay Sahni to present memento to Jawad Azari Jahromi, Honorable Timo Soini, Honorable Manabu HORII, Honorable Ms. Andrea Hermoso, Honorable Mr. Rashid Ismailov, Honorable Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad, Honorable Minister, Government of India, and Mr. Kanwal Sibal. Thank you, Mr. Ajay Sahni. To Honorable Minister, Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad. Thank you so much.